At first, everything seemed normal inside a powerful family, surrounded by comfort and silence. An older figure begins to notice strange looks and actions that don't make sense. Little by little, decisions are made without her consent, completely changing her destiny. What seemed like care might be hiding a betrayal impossible to imagine. If you're hooked on this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Now, let's continue. The Thompson mansion on the Upper East Side of Manhattan always impressed anyone who walked down the street. 3 stories of elegance, impeccable gardens, and this time of year, Christmas decorations that rivaled the window displays on Fifth Avenue. White lights traced the entire facade, while a nearly 13-foot tree dominated the main living room. Robert Thompson watched it all from his office window, a glass of scotch forgotten in his hand. At 42, he was the picture of success. Heir to a chain of home improvement stores spread across the tri-state area, Robert had learned early on that real men don't show weakness. The office was his sanctuary, where numbers made more sense than feelings. In the kitchen, Helen was humming, as she stirred a pot of rice pudding. At 73, Robert's mother maintained a surprising energy. Small, with white hair always tied in a bun, she wore a floral apron over her simple dress. Her time-worn hands moved with the precision of someone who had made that recipe hundreds of times. The house smelled of cinnamon and memories. Helen remembered when they lived in a smaller house in Queens, with a cherry tree in the backyard, and neighbors who would drop by unannounced. Now the dining table could seat 20, but there were rarely more than 3 people sitting at it. The sound of heels echoed in the hallway. Claire Thompson entered the kitchen as if stepping onto a stage, tall, thin, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a beige tailored suit. Her light-colored eyes scanned the kitchen with calculated disdain. "Helen, darling, you don't have to go to all this trouble," Claire said with a cold smile. "We hired caterers for a reason. The dinner will be impeccable, professional." "You can't buy rice pudding, Claire. It has to be made with love. It's tradition." "Tradition, of course," Claire laughed. "But these are modern times. Besides, you need to rest. I've noticed you've been so tired lately. Sometimes even confused, don't you think?" Helen looked at her daughter-in-law. There was something in those eyes that had always bothered her. A calculated coldness. "I'm fine, Claire. I've never been more clear-headed." "Of course you are," her daughter-in-law replied. "It's just that a woman your age, alone with hot stoves, it's worrisome. Any kind of accident could happen. We care so much about you." A 5-year-old girl ran in. Sophia had her father's dark hair and her mother's light eyes. "Grandma Helen, are you going to teach me how to make cookies today?" Helen broke into a genuine smile. "Of course, my love, right after lunch." "Sophia, dear," Claire's voice cut through the moment. "Grandma is busy, and you have your piano lesson soon. Let's go." Helen sighed. Her mind was on the little things that had been happening over the last few months. Documents that appeared in different places. Conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Robert avoiding her gaze, always having some urgent meeting. When Robert introduced Claire 5 years ago, Helen had tried to see the best in her. She came from a good family, had studied at the best schools. But there was something that didn't fit. An ambition that shone through in her eyes when she looked at the mansion, the jewelry, at everything the Thompson name represented. The wedding was quick, lavish. The pregnancy came soon after, as if planned. Since then, the house had changed. Longtime staff were let go. The new decor erased traces of the family's history, and Helen was slowly being pushed to the margins of her own home. In the office, Robert had a meeting in 10 minutes. The door opened without a knock. Claire walked in, smiling. "Honey, I need to talk to you about something important." "Can it be quick?" "It's about your mother. I'm worried. I've been noticing things that are distressing me." Robert felt his stomach tighten. "What things?" "Forgetfulness, confusion. Yesterday she insisted we had stolen her jewelry, which she later admitted she'd put away somewhere else. Today I found her talking to herself in the garden, and there have been episodes of aggression." "Aggression? My mother has never been aggressive." Claire sighed. "I know it's hard to accept, but age comes for everyone. Your mother needs special care, professional medical attention." "She's fine." Claire walked around the desk, massaging his shoulders. Robert, you love your mother. That's why you need to think about what's best for her. There are wonderful places with medical facilities, specialized professionals. You're talking about a home. I'm talking about professional care, and I have to think about our daughter. Sophia is at an important stage. Having a grandmother at home who's losing her grip isn't healthy. My mother adores Sophia. That's exactly why we need to act before something serious happens. Imagine if she forgets the stove is on, if she falls down the stairs. Would you ever forgive yourself? Robert ran a hand over his face. I need to think. Of course, honey. But remember, we have responsibilities. Sometimes love means making difficult decisions. Christmas Eve dinner was in the dining room. The table was impeccable, with only 4 place settings. Sophia tried to liven things up by talking about her piano lesson. Claire smiled. Robert ate in silence. Helen watched everything. How her daughter-in-law deflected conversations away from her. How her son avoided her eyes. Something was happening. She could feel it in the air. After dinner, she stood alone, looking at the Christmas tree, so large and impersonal. She remembered the small trees of her childhood, the handmade ornaments. She remembered her son as a little boy, waking up on Christmas morning. She went up to her room, knelt, and prayed. She asked for wisdom, for protection. She prayed that love would return to that house. Across the hall, Claire was applying face cream. Robert was brushing his teeth. When he came back, she was in bed. Have you thought about what we discussed? Claire, I don't know if it's the right decision. She looked at him. Robert, I didn't want to say this, but I'm pregnant. 2 months. I was going to wait to tell you on Christmas, but you need to know now we're having another baby, and I need my home to be safe. Robert felt the floor drop out from under him. Pregnant. Sometimes the best things aren't planned, but now we have to think about the future, about what's best for everyone. Another child. More responsibilities. I'll look into some options. Claire smiled. I already have. We can look at them together tomorrow. Robert didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about his mother, about all the times he had chosen work over being there for her. In the room next door, Helen wasn't sleeping either. She knew something was about to change. She clutched her rosary and continued to pray. The Christmas lights blinked outside, indifferent. Another day was ending, but it felt like something much bigger was about to begin. The following days brought a subtle shift. It was as if an invisible curtain had fallen, separating Helen from her family. Conversations grew shorter, glances more evasive. Robert threw himself into his work. He left before dawn and returned when the house was silent. Claire seemed to blossom. The pregnancy was announced at an intimate party. During the party, Helen noticed Claire talking with a professional-looking woman. They spoke in low voices, specialized care, controlled environment, smooth transition. When she tried to approach, Claire changed the subject. Alone in her room, Helen opened the drawer where she kept her documents. Her heart pounded. Some were missing: the deed to the apartment she had bought, bank certificates. She went downstairs with firm steps. She found Robert in his office. Robert, I need to talk to you. Mom, it's late. No, my things are disappearing. Documents, personal items. Do you know anything about this? Robert sighed. Mom, maybe you put them somewhere else and forgot. I haven't forgotten anything. I know exactly where I keep my things. A heavy silence fell. The door opened. Claire entered. Helen, it's almost midnight. Shouldn't you be asleep? I'm talking to my son. Claire walked to stand beside her husband. Robert, you're exhausted, and Helen needs to rest. I want to understand what's happening in this house. Where are my documents? Your documents are safe, Claire answered calmly. Robert and I put them in a safe for your protection. A woman your age can be a target for scammers. You have no right to touch my things. Of course we do when it's for your own good, and this behavior, these accusations, these late-night outbursts, they only confirm that you need professional help. Outbursts? I'm not having any outbursts. No one is stealing from you, Robert finally said. Mom, maybe Claire is right. Maybe you need to see a doctor." Helen looked at her son as if he were a stranger. "You believe this? That I'm losing my mind?" "I don't know what to believe, but I'm worried you've been acting differently. Because they want me to seem confused. Don't you see? She's making you believe it. She's isolating me." Claire gave a sad laugh. "See, Robert? Conspiracy theories, paranoia, delusions of persecution are common in senile dementia. I do not have dementia." Claire took a step forward. "Helen, I understand this is frightening, but you can't keep disrupting this house, scaring my daughter, stressing my husband. I'm pregnant. This stress isn't good for the baby." Robert stood up. "Mom, please, go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow." Helen left. She climbed the stairs, each step a small defeat. She entered her room and, for the first time in years, couldn't pray. Only tears came. The next few days were lonely. Robert avoided conversation. Sophia was kept away. The staff treated her with a cold politeness. The worst was the doctor's visit. He arrived on a Thursday, a middle-aged man. Claire greeted him. Robert was there, looking smaller than ever. "Helen, I'm Dr. Morris. Your family asked for a routine evaluation." "I don't need an evaluation." "Of course, but it can't hurt to check." The questions started innocently. Name, date of birth, then they became more complex. "What day is it? Who is the president?" Helen answered everything, but she could tell her answers were being interpreted through a pre-decided filter. "Have you been having memory lapses?" Before she could answer, Claire intervened. "Doctor, she forgets things constantly. Yesterday she insisted we stole her rosary." "That's not true." "See, she doesn't even remember." The consultation dragged on. When the doctor left, Robert walked him out. Helen overheard fragments. "The signs are clear. I recommend a more controlled environment." "I know a place in the Berkshires. I can make the arrangements." The house fell silent. Helen looked down at her hands. 73 years of life, now reduced to a problem to be solved. 3 days later, on a cold morning before dawn, an ambulance arrived. Helen woke to a knock on her door. She opened it to find 2 orderlies and Claire. "It's time to go, Helen. I want to talk to my son. He knows all about it, and he agrees." And just like that, without any goodbyes, Helen was led outside. The last thing she saw was the mansion, lit up, beautiful and empty. Inside the house, Sophia watched from her window. She saw her grandmother being taken away. She didn't understand, but something in her heart knew it was wrong. "Are you enjoying this story? Tell me what you think about it and how you think it's going to end." 3 years had passed since that cold morning. The Thompson mansion remained imposing, its Christmas decorations still impressive. But something fundamental had changed. It was as if the soul of the house had been ripped out. Robert Thompson, now 45, was more successful than ever. The company had expanded into 3 new states. Stocks were soaring. His name was in the business columns. But the man who looked at his own reflection each morning was just a shadow. His eyes were dull, his shoulders carried an invisible weight. He worked 16 hours a day, as if trying to fill a void that would never be filled. Every time he came home, he felt a tightness in his chest as he passed the room that had once been his mother's. It was now Claire's walk-in closet. Claire had flourished. Their second child, Gabriel, had been born healthy. She was a mother of 2, the hostess of the most sought-after parties, a member of charity boards. Her image was perfect, always impeccable, always in control. Sophia was now 8, a quiet girl who spent more time with nannies than with her parents. She didn't talk about the grandmother who had disappeared. She had learned that some questions were not welcome. But sometimes, when no one was looking, she would sit at the closed piano and run her fingers over the silent keys. As for Helen, officially, she had passed away peacefully a few months after being admitted. That's what Robert was told in a brief phone call. There was a discreet funeral, a closed casket that he stared at but didn't have the courage to open. Everything was efficient, clean, convenient. He never visited his mother during those months. Claire always had a reason to postpone. The baby was sick. He had an important trip. The excuses piled up until the news came that it was too late. Robert carried the guilt, like others carry photographs, hidden away, locked up, visited only during his increasingly frequent bouts of insomnia. It was on a November afternoon that everything began to change. The mansion needed renovations. The attic hadn't been touched in years, and Claire had decided to turn it into a home theatre. Megan Sullivan was hired to supervise. At 36, she worked as a project manager, but years ago she had worked as an administrative assistant at a care facility in the Berkshires. When Megan entered the mansion for the first time, she felt something familiar, as if the house held secrets that whispered through the walls. The work in the attic began. The crew found decades of history, old furniture, boxes of documents, dusty paintings. It was on the third day that Megan found it. She was organizing some paintings when a portrait fell. The image was of a woman in her late 60s. White hair in a bun, kind eyes, and a smile that radiated warmth. She wore a simple dress and held a rosary in her hands. Megan picked up the portrait and felt her heart pound. That face. She knew that face. The memories came flooding back. The Berkshires, 4 years ago, when she worked at the Serene Meadows care home, she remembered a woman who had arrived one morning before dawn, brought by an ambulance, with no family present. That woman was different. She wasn't confused, she wasn't sick, just terribly sad. For the first few days she would cry softly, calling for her son. Then she started to pray. She prayed every night, looking out the window. Megan remembered how kind that woman was to everyone. She helped other residents, chatted with the staff, hummed old songs. She was lucid, perfectly aware. And that's why Megan never understood why she was there. The woman said she had been taken against her will, that her son had been deceived, that she needed to get back to take care of her granddaughter. But the documents said otherwise. They said dementia, a danger to herself that the family would visit. But the family never visited. Megan remembered Christmas that year. She was on duty when she found the woman sitting alone, looking at a plastic tree. The woman was softly singing a Christmas carol, tears streaming down her face. "You know, dear," she had said, "Christmas was always my favorite time of year. Not for the decorations, but because the family got together. Now I don't have a family anymore. Or rather I do, but they chose to believe lies." Megan had held that woman's hand, and now, 3 years later, she was holding her portrait inside the house where she should have lived. "That woman never died," Megan whispered. "At least not when they said she did." She remembered because it had left a mark on her. 2 weeks after that Christmas, when she returned from vacation, she asked about the woman. She was transferred, they said. Transferred, not deceased, to where no one could say. Megan went downstairs with the portrait hidden in her bag. Her heart was racing. She had to be sure. She had to know if this was the same family. Over the next few days, as the renovation continued, Megan watched. She watched Robert, man who looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. She watched Claire, too perfect, too controlling. She watched Sophia, a child with a sadness that didn't belong. And she watched the piano, covered in dust. One afternoon, she overheard a conversation. Claire was on the phone. "Old issues that need to stay buried. I don't want anything coming back to haunt us, especially now that Robert has stopped asking questions." That was enough. Megan knew she had to act. She requested a meeting with Robert. She was shown into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. Robert looked tired. He offered her coffee, was polite, distant. "Mr. Thompson, I need to show you something I found during the renovation." She placed the portrait on the desk. Robert looked at it and turned pale. For a long moment he said nothing. He just stared at his mother's face. "My mother," he whispered. "Yes, and I need to tell you something that will change everything you think you know." "What do you mean?" Megan took a deep breath. "I worked at the Serene Meadows care home 3 years ago. Your mother was there and she wasn't sick. She was perfectly lucid." Robert shot up from his chair. "That's impossible. She had dementia. The doctors lied or they were deceived. Your mother was as lucid as you or I, and she never died when they said she did." "What?" "She was transferred 2 weeks after Christmas. I was on vacation. When I came back, she was gone, but she didn't die. She was transferred." "Transferred where and why?" Robert felt the floor disappear. Locked away memories started to surface. The rush to have her admitted, the closed casket, the lack of explanations. Are you sure? Absolutely. I spent months caring for her. She was one of the most lucid residents, and the loneliest. She waited for you to visit. The words were like knives. Robert sat down heavily. For 3 years he had carried the guilt of not visiting his dying mother. Now he was discovering it might all have been a lie, that he might have abandoned her while she was alive, aware, waiting. I need to know the truth, where she is, if she's still... Megan nodded. I'll help you. I have some old contacts. We can start there. The door opened. Claire walked in, stopping short when she saw the scene. The portrait on the desk, Robert in tears, Megan looking determined. What's going on here? The truth, Megan answered. The truth is coming out. Claire looked at the portrait, at her husband, and she understood. Her reign was beginning to crumble. Robert, she began, I don't know what this woman has told you, but I need you to be rational. Rational? You're asking me to be rational after you possibly hid my mother from me, after you made me believe she was dead. You don't understand. I understand perfectly for the first time in years. He looked at Megan. Help me find her, wherever she is. Let's start now. The investigation began that night and stretched over 2 intense weeks. Every document they uncovered revealed new layers of deceit. Megan used her contacts at the care home. A former colleague agreed to help. She dug through old files, transfer records. The truth began to emerge. Helen had indeed been transferred, but not to another hospital. The record showed monthly payments to an address in Poughkeepsie, a city about 70 miles from New York. The payments were made from an account Robert didn't know existed, opened in his name but with Claire holding power of attorney. She was being supported, Robert murmured. My mother was alive and Claire was paying to keep her hidden. There's more, Megan showed him. This doctor's signature. He lost his license for medical fraud. And look at the address for the funeral home. It closed 2 years ago under investigation for falsifying documents. Robert felt sick. It was all a lie. Every tear, every sleepless night, every ounce of guilt, all based on a charade. The confrontation with Claire was inevitable. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in the living room. Robert laid all, the documents on the coffee table one by one. Explain, he said. Explain how my mother has been receiving monthly transfers from an account in my name. Claire maintained her composure for a few seconds. Robert, you don't understand. I did it for us. You lied. You forged documents. You hid my mother. She was ruining everything, Claire exploded. Always questioning, always interfering. I couldn't build the life we deserved with her around. The life you deserved. It was all about control. And it worked. For 3 years you were exactly the husband I needed. Obedient, focused, with no emotional distractions. Robert looked at the woman he had shared a bed with for 8 years and realized he had never known her. Where is my mother? Claire crossed her arms. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. I don't need you to tell me. I already know where she is and I'm going to get her. If you do this, I'll lose everything. I'll fight you for every penny. Then fight. But know this. Everything you built on lies is about to come crashing down. He walked out without a backward glance. Megan was waiting for him in the car, the Poughkeepsie address programmed into the GPS. The drive took a little over an hour. The address led them to a simple neighborhood with modest houses. Number 243 was a small house, painted a pale yellow, with a well-tended garden. Robert got out on shaky legs. Each step was a mix of hope and terror. What if he was too late? What if she wouldn't forgive him? Megan rang the doorbell. They heard footsteps. The door opened to reveal a kind-faced, middle-aged woman. Can I help you? We're looking for Helen Thompson. The woman studied them, then her face lit up. Are you from Robert? I am Robert, I'm her son. The woman covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Thank God, she never lost faith. Please come in. They followed her down a modest hallway into a small but cozy living room. And there, sitting in an armchair near the window with a rosary in her hands and her hair perfectly white, was Helen. She looked up. For a moment, she was still, as if she couldn't believe it. Then the rosary fell from her hands. Robert. Mum. Robert crossed the room and knelt beside the armchair, burying his face in his mother's lap. Helen, with trembling hands, stroked her son's hair, tears streaming down her face. You came. My son, you finally came. Forgive me. Forgive me, Mum. I was so blind. I believed the lies. I abandoned you. Shh. You're here now. That's all that matters. They stayed like that for long minutes, 3 years of separation, pain and lies being washed away by tears. Megan and the homeowner quietly slipped out of the room. When they finally composed themselves, Robert sat at his mother's feet, holding her hands as if afraid she might disappear. Tell me everything. And Helen told him. About the morning she was taken, about the months in the facility in the Berkshires, about the sudden transfer to this house, about Julia, the homeowner, a retired nurse who had agreed to care for her in exchange for the payments, but who over time had become a true friend. Julia treated me with kindness. She didn't know the whole truth at first, but little by little, I told her. She was outraged, wanted to call the police, but I asked her not to. I was scared, and I had faith that one day you would find out the truth. I should have seen it sooner. You loved your wife, or you thought you did. Love can blind us, son, but it can also heal us when it's real. Robert stayed in Poughkeepsie until nightfall, talking, asking for forgiveness, listening to stories of the past 3 years. Helen spoke of the nights spent in prayer, of the faith that sustained her, of the certainty that one day he would return. When he finally left, it was with a promise to be back the next day. I need to get some things in order first, Mom, but I'm bringing you home. Don't rush, son. Now that I know you've come back to me, I can wait a few more days. On the way back to New York City, Robert was silent. Megan respected his space, letting him process everything he had discovered. As they reached the city, he finally spoke. Thank you. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth. You saved my mother. You saved me too. I just did what was right. In the following days, Robert made all the necessary arrangements. He consulted with lawyers specializing in family law. The documents Megan had helped gather were more than enough proof of forgery, embezzlement, and even kidnapping. The legal battle would be long and complicated, but Robert was prepared to fight with everything he had. It wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming the years that had been stolen, about rebuilding the family he had almost lost completely. Claire tried to negotiate. She sent texts, made calls, even showed up at Robert's office once. He received her with a coldness she had never seen in him. Robert, we can handle this civilly. Think of our children. I am thinking of them. Sophia already knows the truth, and Gabriel will know when he's old enough to understand. They deserve to grow up knowing what honesty is. You're destroying our family. No, Claire, you did that 3 years ago, when you decided to rip my mother out of her life and mine. I'm just correcting the mistake of having believed you. She left the office furious, but Robert knew her anger was just fear. Fear of losing everything she had gained through manipulation and lies. Sophia was the most delicate part of the whole process. Robert sat down with his daughter one quiet afternoon and told her the truth. The 8-year-old girl listened with wide eyes, tears streaming down her face when she understood that the grandmother she loved so much was alive. Grandma Helen is alive? For real? For real, my sweet girl, and we're going to bring her home soon. Can I go with you next time you visit her? Of course you can. She'll be so happy to see you. The following weekend, Robert took Sophia to Poughkeepsie. The reunion between grandmother and granddaughter was an emotional moment that transcended words. Helen cried seeing how much Sophia had grown, and the little girl clung to her grandmother as if she never wanted to let go. They spent the whole afternoon together. Helen told stories, taught Sophia how to pray the rosary, and talked about the cookies they would make together as soon as she came home. The girl listened intently, absorbing every word, every gesture, every smile from the grandmother she thought she had lost forever. Julia watched from a distance with a smile. The woman she had cared for 3 years was finally getting what she deserved: love, family, justice. When it was time to leave, Sophia hugged her grandmother tightly. "I'll be back next week, Grandma, I promise. I'll be waiting, my beautiful granddaughter. I'll always be waiting." In the car, on the way back to the city, Sophia looked out the window with a thoughtful expression. "Daddy, why did Mommy do that to Grandma?" Robert took a deep breath. "Sometimes people do bad things because they're afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid of not being the center of attention. Your mother had a lot of fears that she hid very well. Is she going to jail?" "I don't know, Sophia. The judges will decide that. But no matter what happens, you need to know that none of this is your fault. You are a wonderful child and you are loved. By me, by Grandma Helen, and yes, by your mother too, in the way she's able to love." The weeks passed. Robert worked tirelessly with his lawyers, arranging the separation, ensuring everything was done as fairly as possible. Claire tried to use Gabriel as a bargaining chip, but Robert stood firm. The children would not be used as weapons in this war. Finally, on a December morning just a few days before Christmas, Robert went to Poughkeepsie to bring Helen home for good. Julia helped pack the few belongings she had accumulated over the years. "I'm going to miss you," Julia said, hugging Helen. "You brought so much light to this house. And you gave me a home when I had none. I will never forget your kindness." The two women said goodbye with tears, but they were happy tears, tears of gratitude and hope. When Helen walked through the front door of the Thompson mansion, Sophia was waiting in the foyer, holding a bouquet of flowers she had picked out herself. The girl ran to hug her grandmother, and the two of them stood there in the middle of that enormous hall, crying and laughing at the same time. "Welcome home, Grandma." "Thank you, my love. Thank you for never forgetting me." Robert watched the scene with a tight heart. 3 years. 3 years he could never get back. But he had now. He had the chance to start over, to do things differently, to be the son he always should have been. In the days that followed, the house underwent a quiet transformation. The walk-in closet that had replaced Helen's room was dismantled. Her furniture, which had been stored in the attic, was brought back down. Her photos went back on the walls. Her personal belongings returned to their rightful places. The Thompson mansion was being restored, not just physically, but emotionally. The soul that had been ripped out was being carefully put back in its place. A week after Helen's return, Robert organized a small dinner. Just him, his mother, Sophia, and Megan, who had become an important part of this story of rescue and redemption. During dinner, Helen looked around the table and smiled. "You know, I spent so many nights dreaming of this moment, being here again in this house, surrounded by the people I love. There were times I thought it would never happen. But it did, Mom. And I'm going to make sure that every day from now on is better than the last." "You don't have to make up for the past, son. The past is over. What matters is the present. It's this moment right here, now, together." Sophia raised her juice glass. "I want to make a toast." Everyone raised their glasses. To Grandma Helen, who never gave up on us, and to Daddy, who finally saw the truth, and to Megan, who was brave enough to tell that truth. To family, Helen added, to real family, which is built on love and truth. To family, they all repeated. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Robert sat at the piano that had remained closed for so long. His hands touched the keys softly, experimenting, remembering. It wasn't perfect, but he was trying. From upstairs, Helen heard the music and smiled in the dark. Her son was coming back. Not the cold, distant man he had become, but the kind-hearted boy she had raised. He was coming back, and she would be there to guide him home. Christmas was approaching, and for the first time in years, the Thompson mansion had a real reason to celebrate. Not appearances, not luxury, not a perfect image for the outside world, but something much more precious. True love, forgiveness, a second chance. And as the Christmas lights began to be hung around the city, inside that house, a much brighter light was shining. The light of renewed hope, of a rebuilt family, of a love that survived even the cruelest of betrayals. Helen looked to the future with gratitude. 3 years had been stolen from her, it was true, but she had her son back, she had her granddaughter, she had a home again, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could steal the joy she felt in her heart. The storm had passed, the sun was finally shining again, and the Thompson house, after so long in the shadows, was ready to welcome the light. Christmas arrived, bringing with it a typical December chill to New York. But inside the Thompson mansion, there was a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was the warmth of a family reunited, of wounds being healed, of love being rebuilt brick by brick. Helen woke up early on Christmas morning. For the first time in 3 years, she woke up in her own bed, in her own room, in her own home. She got up slowly, feeling the weight of the years and her trials in her joints, but with a heart lighter than it had been in a very long time. She went to the window and opened the curtains. The garden below was covered in morning dew, sparkling in the first rays of sunlight. It was so different from the small window in Poughkeepsie, where she had spent 3 years looking out and praying for this day to come. She knelt beside her bed and prayed. But this time, it wasn't a prayer of supplication or suffering. It was a prayer of deep gratitude, of acknowledging that miracles really do happen when we least expect them. In the kitchen, she found Robert already awake, making coffee. Her son looked at her and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Good morning, Mom. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, my son." They hugged, a hug that said more than 1,000 words ever could. A hug of forgiveness, of new beginnings, of the promise of a better future. "We're going to make Christmas dinner together today," Robert said. "Me, you, and Sophia, like old times." Helen smiled through tears. Like old times. Sophia appeared in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes. When she saw her grandmother, her face lit up. "Grandma, you're really here. It wasn't a dream." "It wasn't a dream, my sweet girl. I'm really here and I'm not going anywhere." The little girl ran to hug her grandmother, and the 3 of them stood there in the kitchen of that enormous mansion, forming a perfect circle of love and protection. The day was spent in preparations. Helen taught Sophia how to make gingerbread cookies, just as she had promised years ago. The kitchen became a mess of flour, sugar, and laughter. Robert watched from a distance, taking pictures with his phone, capturing memories he now knew were too precious to waste. In the afternoon, they began to prepare dinner. It wouldn't be anything extravagant. There would be no hired caterers or professional decorators. It would be simple, homemade, made with love. Rice, stuffing, a roasted turkey, Helen's special salad, and of course, the rice pudding she made like no one else. As they cooked together, Robert finally found the courage to ask the question that had been tormenting him. "Mom, how did you manage to forgive me, after everything I did, believing her instead of you?" Helen stopped stirring the pot and looked at her son. "Robert, you were deceived by someone very skilled at manipulation. Claire knew exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit. You're not perfect, son, none of us are, but you came back. You sought the truth, you brought me home. That's worth more than any mistake from the past. But 3 years, Mom. 3 years I left you alone. 3 years that taught me the strength of faith, the depth of true love, the value of every moment we have together. They weren't wasted years, son. They were years of growth, of learning. And now we're here, stronger than before." Robert hugged his mother, letting the tears fall freely. Sophia joined the hug, and the 3 of them stood there in the middle of a kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and love. The doorbell rang. Robert went to answer it and found Megan at the door holding an apple pie. "I hope you don't mind. I brought dessert." "Of course we don't mind. Come in, you're part of the family now." Megan entered, a little shy, but was greeted with warm hugs from Helen and Sophia. The table was set, not in the immense dining room, but right there in the kitchen, around the smaller table where only those who truly mattered could fit. Before they ate, Robert asked for a moment, "I want to say a few things before we begin." Everyone fell silent, attentive. "This past year has been the hardest of my life. I discovered that I had built my existence on lies. that I hurt the person who loved me most in the world, that I almost lost everything that truly matters. But it was also the year I learned the real meaning of forgiveness, of second chances, of unconditional love. He looked at his mother. "Mom, you taught me that true love never gives up. You waited for me even when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for your unwavering faith." Then he looked at Sophia. "And you, my daughter, showed me that it's never too late to start over, to be a better person, to choose what's right instead of what's easy." And finally, he looked at Megan. "And you had the courage to speak the truth when it would have been much easier to stay silent. You saved this family." "Let's make a toast," Helen said, raising her glass, "to the love that survives the storms, to the truth that sets us free, to the family we choose to build every day." "To family," they all repeated. The dinner was noisy, full of overlapping conversations, laughter, stories being told and retold. Sophia talked non-stop, making plans for all the things she would do with her grandmother. Megan shared memories of when she cared for Helen in the Berkshires, details that could now be spoken aloud. After dinner, Robert brought out the guitar he hadn't played in years. Helen sat at the piano. Together, father and son made music for the first time in decades. It wasn't perfect, they were rusty, but it was real. It was theirs. Sophia danced around the room, spinning with her arms outstretched, laughing with the pure joy of being surrounded by love. Megan clapped along to the rhythm, smiling as she watched this family that had almost been lost, now so alive and whole. As the night wore on, Megan said her goodbyes with a promise to return soon. Sophia went to bed, exhausted, but happy. Robert and Helen remained in the living room, looking at the Christmas tree they had decorated together. "You know what I missed most these past 3 years?" Helen asked. "What, Mom?" "This silence. The comfortable silence of being with someone you love without needing to fill every moment with words." Robert took his mother's hand. "I missed it too. Everything. You." They sat there for a long time, just existing in the same space, in the same moment, together. The following months brought changes. The legal battle with Claire was settled. She didn't go to prison, but she lost much of what she had gained through manipulation. Gabriel spent weekends with Robert, and slowly he got to know the grandmother he had been denied. The mansion changed. It was no longer a museum of perfect appearances, but a living, noisy, imperfect, and wonderful home. There was laughter in the hallways, music in the living room, the smell of home-cooked meals in the kitchen. Robert changed most radically. He cut back his work hours, learned to delegate, to trust. He started being present for dinners, for Sunday afternoons, for the small, precious moments he used to let slip by. Sophia blossomed under her grandmother's care. She learned to play the piano, to make cookies, to pray the rosary. But more importantly, she learned what it means to be loved unconditionally, without manipulation, without hidden agendas. And Helen, in her final years, lived surrounded by everything she had ever wanted. Not luxury or status, but true love, a united family, the peace of knowing her faith had not been wasted. A year after that Christmas reunion, the family was once again gathered around the table. But this time, there were more people. Julia had been invited from Poughkeepsie, a few true friends, people who had supported Robert during the difficult period. During dinner, Sophia raised her glass. "I want to make a toast." Everyone paid attention. "To the past year, which changed our lives, to the brave people who speak the truth, and most of all to Grandma Helen, who taught us that true. Love is stronger than any lie." There was applause. Helen cried happy tears, and Robert, looking around that table full of people he loved, finally understood what his father had tried to teach him, what his mother had always known. Success isn't measured in money or property. It's measured in moments like this, in shared love, in a united family. The Christmas lights shone outside, reflecting in the windows. Inside the house, there was an even stronger light, the light of redemption, of forgiveness, of a second chance well used. And when everyone stood up from the table, Helen asked for a moment. She stood, frail but strong, and looked at each person in the room. I want you to know that every one of you is a miracle in my life. I spent 3 years in darkness, but I never lost hope, because I knew deep in my heart that true love always finds its way back home. And I'm home now, finally home. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Robert hugged his mother, Sophia joined in, and soon everyone was in a big group hug, a circle of love and gratitude. The night ended with music, laughter, and plans for the future. Simple plans, but precious ones. Family trips, Sunday afternoons together, Christmases that would be celebrated with love instead of appearances. And when everyone had finally gone home and the house fell silent, Robert stayed awake for a while longer, just thinking about how he had almost lost everything, about how he was saved not by his own wisdom, but by the courage of a stranger, the unwavering faith of his mother, and the innocence of his daughter. In the room next door, Helen prayed her nightly prayers, but now, instead of asking, she gave thanks. She gave thanks for each day, for each moment, for each hug. She gave thanks for the miracle that proved that even in the deepest darkness, light can find a way. And outside, the city slept under a starry sky. But inside the Thompson mansion, something much rarer and more precious had happened. A family had been saved. Love had won. And faith had been rewarded. Because in the end, that's the true magic of Christmas. It's not in the presents or the decorations. It's in the ability of love to heal, to forgive, to rebuild what was broken. It's in the second chance that everyone deserves. It's in the reunion that seemed impossible, but became real. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Robert, Helen, and Sophia has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of pain, forgiveness, and reunion, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what part of this story resonated with you the most. Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, stories that reveal the deepest side of the human soul, that make us believe in the power of true love and the strength of family. We'll see you in the next episode, because every story here is proof that miracles happen when we least expect them, and that love always finds its way back home.